Hi, I'm Rick. Welcome to Elbow Shots. Today I want to show you one of the most challenging laminate jobs I've ever had. It was, at the very least, extremely interesting. Do not try this at home. We have a laminate countertop that flows out to a garden window, and that was a big enough challenge on its own. But the previous incarnation of this kitchen had a beautiful full-height tile backsplash. The new kitchen is being built to conform to the backsplash. Basically, new cabinets and subtops are being retrofit to the old design. Fortunately, the cabinet installers did an amazing job installing the cabinets and subtops. Their work was perfect, which makes my job easier, and it shows in the results. Let's start by getting some rough measurements. This garden window area is 4 feet deep and 3 feet wide. The overall length of this run is 10 feet. I'll be using an 8-foot sheet here. My seam will be somewhere between the subtop seam and the sink. This leg is 4.5. The peninsula is about 7 feet long and 38 inches wide, and I have a seam placement area from 39 to 47 inches. This piece will have a 7-foot leg to reach our seam area, and it's 57 inches to the stove. The standard depth of these countertops is 25 inches. I'll have a full deck seam over here in this vicinity and another full deck seam over here, a double seam at the stove. We have 3 sheets of laminate, 2 4x8s at 32 square feet each, and a 5x10 of 50 square feet. I take my self-edge pieces off first, and then I get my decks cut. Let's eat the crust first. By that, I mean do the hard part first. It gets easier from there. This 4x8 is going to be a challenge. This is an occupied home, so I have a little bit of room, but not a lot. Let's get this sheet up in there. This looks awkward, but please don't try to help. I've got this. I'm tall and I have long arms, so I'll be able to hold the sheet up high enough to let it drape down to contact with the countertop. I use the edges like feeler gauges to help me guide it into position. The far end against the wall and the garden window edges against the deck give me feedback. And I'm controlling the sheet by bending it in a semi-roll. Anytime I can get a bend in a sheet, I'm in control. I haven't made any cuts on the left side of this sheet, so I don't have to worry about fragile cut edges getting caught up on irregularities. I want to fit in one direction at a time. So first I will fit along the back wall and then fit everything to the right. Because the plan is to trim the window, I factored in how much I want to shift over to get under the tile. Out here along the back, there's something holding it out on the right side, while the left side is in contact. Let's see what's going on here. We're tucked under the tile everywhere, so I don't know. I'll draw a line along the tile to see what that can show us. Well, the tile line is much straighter than my cut line. I'd say that's operator error, but remember, it was really blurry on that end. It looks like I might have used my slitter to get a clean edge, but I didn't get it started right. So I trimmed that off. I just wanted to show you this here. When you're coming up to an inside corner, you don't want to clip it all the way with the shears because you can blow out the backing of the laminate, making the corner weaker and more susceptible to tearing. We want this corner to be as strong as possible because we're going to put it to the test here in a minute. This would be a good time to talk about reinforcing this kind of corner with duct tape. There's a lot of leverage from the two directions due to the size of this L. This inside corner is the weakest link in the chain. If it's an inside corner on the side of an overhang, I'll make an angle cut. In this case, I'm fitting to an outside corner, so that's not an option. Cutting all the way can fracture the backing. If you use the middle of the shears blade and stop at the line, you can have a stronger corner. It still took out a little of the backing, but it's not as bad. If you feel comfortable with a single piece, use a single piece. If you'd rather double it up, use 2. If you think you really need to brace it, this amount of tape is cheap. If you need to move it, you can brace it with a brace and take it off when you get it in place. If you're curious about the floor, it's my greenhouse floor. I went in there to film this because it was about 15 degrees warmer inside than out. Alright, we'll give the camera a ride on the sheet while we get it into place. With the sheet aligned better, the gap is more even along this wall. Now that the sheet is fitted along the back wall, I want to scribe it into everything on the right. I'm going to set my dividers up so that this edge of the laminate will just tuck under the tile. That's how I determine how far to shift it. I have the needle scribe tip in there because the pen that goes with these dividers is dried up. Pencil scribes won't work because the pencil by itself won't leave a visible line on this kind of laminate. I want to make sure I get a good mark the first time. I do not want to have to bring this back over to remark it. Since the backsplash is all done, this wall isn't getting any treatment. It will be scribed in and finished with a bead of caulking. While I'm right here, I'll make sure my dividers didn't collapse any when I was scribing in the end wall. I want to mark the window the same as the wall. A pencil alone does not leave a visible line, and the needle scribe alone leaves a barely visible line. But if you rub a little graphite into the needle scratch, you get a highly visible fine line. Now, this is the right end that I'm scribe fitting to the wall. I want that to be a nice clean cut. This is what they call 3D laminate. Notice the depth of the sparkles. Sometimes you just got to clear the debris from your shears. Alright, slide this back over again. Oh, hanging up on the corner of the window here. I'll just retrim it. There we go. We're even along the back side of the window and along the right side of it, tucked under the edge of the tile along here and the rest of the tile. The end wall is fitted evenly. Now that I have the back wall and everything on the right side fitted, I'm going to put corresponding position marks on the laminate and the window frame. Since I have fixed points from the back and right sides, I can get accurate measurements to make precise cuts. If I need to retrim anything, I can fit it using the position marks. I had to retrim this piece because this section is angled. So cut it right up to the edge, but don't blow it out. Then you can give it a little twist to break off the waste strip. I'll slide this back into place here. And it was hung up on the tile. The tile setter left the metal sheetrock corner in place, which is perfectly acceptable, but it makes the corner stick out and angle back to the window. That creates a reverse wedge for me, which may present a challenge later. At any rate, this sheet is fitted on all three sides of the window. It's tucked under the tile everywhere there is tile, and scribed in evenly to the bare wall. Beautiful. The first sheet is fitted. Over here, I want to scribe it into the tile enough to give myself an overhang at this corner. Again, I'll use the needle scribes and rub some graphite into the scratch and trim it with the shears. Now you might think that by scribing it in that deeply, you should get a perfect fit. Well, I would have, except the tile is not flat and the laminate doesn't quite fit under the tile here. I have plenty of room to move this over. I'll need to remark this corner so I know where to stop my cuts. Then I can rescribe it with my pen. Now it's retrimmed and tucked under the tile beautifully, ready to move on to the next. The left of stove and right of stove pieces were fairly straightforward fits, so let's move on to getting the seams ready to cut. I still have this piece overlapping that piece by a few inches. I've pre-cut the edge of the top piece to where I want to place my seam. I marked the location of that edge with a silhouette mark on the bottom sheet. And just slide it out. From those marks, I want to make marks a ½ inch over to allow for the ½ inch router bit path. When I cut this seam with my router, it will remove a 1/2 inch material, so I have to allow for that. Then I score the line with a score awl and snap it off. It's a little bit more difficult to get it started on an angle. Now when I set this up in my seaming jig, it will remove 1/4 inch from the edge of each sheet. Alright, that side is ready to go. Let's run back over to the other side. Winter temperatures and high humidity can make the laminate curl a little bit, making it puffy. I'll show you why that's important in a minute. When I fitted this peninsula sheet, I held the edges parallel to the subtop, which is not perfectly square to my other sheet that I'm joining to. It's a 1/2 inch at the back, but not quite right at the front. So I'm just going to use a scrap to mark a line and recut this edge because it's easier for me if the edges are parallel when I'm putting them in the seaming jig. The grain of these two sheets are running perpendicular to each other. They each have a mind of their own and want to curl their own way. When I tried to cut my seam, the router stalled halfway through and the bit did a little dance and really cut it up. Left a couple of divots in the middle of the dance floor. So I'm going to recut my seam. I don't have room to take out another 1/2 inch material, so I'm going to have to set it up so that I only remove enough to get rid of the little boogers. I moved the straight edge away 1/16 inch, keeping it parallel to the seam edge, and then I moved the peninsula sheet 1/8 inch closer, keeping it parallel. Now when I run my router through again, it removes 1/16 inch from the edge of each sheet. This time I'm going to use a scrap to hold the two edges in alignment. Then I'll have to move it as I go. I don't want to try to push it with the router. I'm already recutting this thing. I don't want to take the chance. Alright, I've removed the divots and I have a fresh cut seam. Now we just need to cut this seam over here. I'll just pull this out. Nope, not going to pull it out like that. Let's see if I can reach under there and bow it up. Nope, my arm isn't long enough to pull that off. I'm going to use my 4-foot straight edge to lift this sheet evenly from where I am to the outside edge of the window, which is 4 feet away. I'm using the tile to hold these edges down so I can lift the center. That's how I get my bow. I'm going to slide the straight edge all the way in and then give it a little twist so the sheet is bowing on the elevated edge. With it bowed, I can pull it out of there. The proper way to do this would be to continue pulling the sheet out until it clears the corner. I was thinking I was getting the nose out too far and was going to lose everything onto the floor. I thought I could recapture the flex now that I could grab the corners. Instead, it buckled. I knew better. I need to recover the bow in this sheet with arms that are too short to reach all the way and no turning back. Now that I've got some support, I can shift it a little and take a breath. For my next trick, I want to lay this 8-foot sheet on the floor. I'm going to handle it by the inside corners of the garden window so I can bow it through this section for better control. I'm going to use friction against the self edge to slow that end until I can get it to the floor in a controlled fall. Reinforce your corners with duct tape. Oop, scary. Okay, I have my pieces laid out on the floor in my seaming jig. Because of the garden window section, I have my clamp set up on the very end of the seaming board. Alright, now I have my 2 main deck seams cut. I just have to get this little guy over here. Maybe it fits better this way. Nope, it was better the first time. We just don't want any pivot points when assembling multiple pieces. I'll scribe that in. We want this piece to key to the wall too. I'll make a silhouette cut on one end first, chop it off, and a quick deburr with a file. Hold that in place, then I can tuck the other end underneath and do likewise. I had already cut the ends of these two sheets with the slitter to give them clean square edges. The new stove is a freestanding with raised back controls, so this strip is incorrect for the stove. It does, however, make a lot of sense for the tile backsplash. Due to limited space, I had to glue one half at a time to have room for the sheets to dry. I'm using the neutral colored contact cement, which looks invisible here. I don't have any 50-inch blind slats, so I'm going to use the 42-inch white slats to reach out into the garden window and use the 28-inch green ones at countertop depth all the way across. The white ones go on the bottom, so I can pull them out from underneath the sink cutout. I always count how many I use, so I know how many need to come back out. I need to punch a hole to start my router bit to cut the sinkhole. And just like that, we have a new kitchen. And we were able to save the backsplash that she loved. I wasn't happy with the color mismatch at this seam. Some of it works, but some of it is just off. Can't win them all. I'm happy with everything else. The double seams at the stove and the other deck seam are beautiful. This countertop flows together and out to the garden. Thank you for watching. I hope you get something out of this. If you did, let me know in the comments. Hit the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. This is a bonus section for those who get it. If you can think of the sheet as a musical instrument, you will note that the long string to the wall on the right will vibrate at a different frequency than the shorter strings of the middle corner and the still shorter strings of the left corner. The vibrations from those points making contact with the different surfaces is feedback. If you can feel the difference in your hand, you will naturally know how to handle any sheet of laminate music. See y'all later.